I think it's very important to qualify the risk by saying a calculated risk.
Yeah.
I believe in really thinking something through, hence my pro and cons chart.
Yes. Love that.
But, life is mysterious. Life is the unknown, but life is exciting and it's there for you and you get one shot. So think it through and go for it. And the worst case, it doesn't work out. Then you take a step back and you try again or you go back. But at least you can tell yourself, I tried.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Envisionaire podcast with Nicole Nguyen. This is a podcast where we explore everyday topics, share our experiences, and help turn life's challenges into life's opportunities. Let's get ready to envision living our best lives. On today's episode, we have Jenna Renée, who will be speaking about living life as an expat in Europe. I have known Jenna for over a decade. We first met when we were both doing our master's degree at University of Ottawa and quickly bonded over our love for politics and international relations. Jenna worked as a political staffer on Parliament Hill for 4 years before moving to Europe as part of a diplomatic mission. Jenna has now been living as an expat in Europe since 2017 and has lived in 2 European countries over the last 5 years. Over this time, I have seen Jenna not only thrive in her career, but also meet her lovely husband, Fabian, who is a German national, and have a beautiful baby girl while living the expat life. It has been amazing to see Jenna overcome challenges that many expats face and also turn these into opportunities and grow immensely as a result. I am so thrilled that Jenna has agreed to come on the Envisionaire podcast and speak about her experiences as an expat in Europe. So welcome, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you for the warm welcome and for letting me be part of this amazing project. Congratulations.
Aw, thanks, Jenna. That's so nice. Thank you. Typically, what I like to do in the podcast is start by asking you a little bit about yourself and your background so our listeners can understand who you are and how you've basically ended up as an expat living in Europe. So I know that you were born in London, Ontario, but could you tell us a bit more about your childhood, how it was living in London, Ontario? Some of our listeners may not know where that is. And so I think that might be helpful. And maybe your route into politics and then also living as an expat.
Absolutely. I always find it interesting that it's quite difficult for me anyways to speak a little bit about myself. You would think it would be the easiest thing, but I find it quite difficult sometimes to kind of look back on, now I'm 35, so 35 years and trying to summarize it. But yes, I was born and raised in London, Ontario. London, Ontario is about an hour and a half west of Toronto. What's really funny now being in Europe is I always have to clarify I call it my London. So my London, Ontario, because as you know, there's London, England, and everybody thinks London, England. And on your passport, it says the city you were born in and the country. It doesn't say the province or the land or the region.
Yes.
And so I get asked all the time at different European customs, I don't understand why it says London, but it says this country.
Yeah.
Do you mean London, Great Britain? And then so I always have to clarify. Anyways, this is my side tangent coming from London, Ontario.
Yeah.
But no, born and raised in London, Ontario. A couple of years ago, it was the 10th largest city in Canada.
Right.
Although it really feels like a small town city. My parents went to university there. They came from different regions in Canada, but went to the University of Western Ontario, met there, and then established their roots there. I did my undergrad there as well, and then moved to Ottawa to pursue my master's. And for me, Ottawa was a big city. And so I was, very excited to go to a quote unquote big city. Although if you ask people, most people in Ottawa, they don't consider it to be a big city.
I think it's definitely a big city. Maybe not as much hustle and bustle as some other cities, but I think it's a big city. It's a beautiful city.
Absolutely. And so for that reason, that's why I ended up in Ottawa and did my master's.
Yeah.
When I was a student, worked for the federal government. And then I happened to meet this wonderful, charismatic individual in one of my master's classes named Nicole, who really opened up a door that changed the rest of my life.
Oh, Jenna.
And I say that with complete modesty and honesty.
Oh,
That's literally what happened.
that is so
So
sweet.
I'm forever in your debt, Nicole.
Oh, you're so kind. You have paved your way. For listeners, we did meet in a master's class. What was the class name again?
I think it was Canadian Studies.
Canadian Studies or Canadian Political Studies. We instantly just hit it off and became fast friends. And I was working as a political staffer at the time. And Jenna just had this immense love and passion for everything Canada and Canadian politics. It was actually very infectious. And I know that it was one of your goals to work on Parliament Hill. And so I had the opportunity to go and pursue my law school in England. And so I thought she would be a perfect fit to take over the reins in the political office that we work in, or I used to work in. And she did, and she was amazing. And so you started your political staffer career, and you've done such a brilliant job. So really, really proud of you.
Well, thank you very much. You know, there's not many opportunities on the Hill. It can be, well, it is a bubble, and it's just the nature of the role. But you offer me a very unique opportunity. And when I moved to Ottawa, I didn't know anybody. So I was starting my life over. And so I didn't really have, I had no network to meet you in school. And you offered me an opportunity. And the opportunity started with a volunteer position on the Hill with a member of Parliament. And I really appreciate that I was able to step up each step of the ladder as I worked my way up in what ended up to be my professional career. Again, I did not know my life was going that way. And I think it's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, you understand all the different pieces that go into a political office, the political world, the political system, because you work in each section as you work your way up. The second thing is you have an appreciation for the work that others around you do, regardless of what their contribution is, because you've probably been in their shoes. So you have a very holistic understanding and a holistic appreciation for the quote unquote Hill, as we call it, which can be quite the beast.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. You've definitely earned your current role. You've worked really hard, and you've earned every good thing that's come your way. So I'm so, so proud of you again. Like, I just have to say
Thank you,
that.
Nicole.
Very, very proud of you. Yes. Okay. So that's how you got on Parliament Hill. And then subsequently, a few years in, there was an opportunity to go abroad on a diplomatic mission. So you ended up taking that. And so I'd like to ask you, as a child, as a teenager, even coming to Ottawa, did you eventually want to go and live abroad? Was that always something you had really aspired for, or is that something that just came and you took it?
To be fully honest, it was never an aspiration or a dream of mine to be in the diplomatic corps abroad. Of course, I always thought that was a fascinating line of work. It would be wonderful to be a part of it. Oh, yeah, of course, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But it was never on my checklist because I didn't know anybody in that world. I had no experience in the diplomatic corps in terms of knowing contacts or foreign officials or anything like that. Of course, in my line of work, you know, there was some travel and things like that. But the actual expat life within the diplomatic corps had never crossed paths with my own. So it was a little bit of a mystery, of a far interest, but never an aspiration.
Okay.
However, when there was an opportunity to be part of that world, I mean, it's very tough to say no to. I was very, very lucky to be offered that, and I decided to go ahead with it. Now, the decision was actually not as easy as one may think. Most people would think, of course, you would jump on that. But I was, at the time, working for someone that I had unbelievable admiration for and was enjoying every second, was enjoying the challenge, was enjoying the experience. And I almost said no to going abroad. It was a very tough decision. And I don't know about yourself and your listeners, but whenever I have a tough decision, I go back to the old school of piece of paper and a pen, and you do your pros and your cons list. Like, that's my default.
Yes.
And I literally did that. And I still remember sitting on my couch late at night in my little apartment in Ottawa with my big piece of paper and writing every pro and every cons to accepting this opportunity. And then obviously at the end of the day, I decided to accept it.
Okay, so, well, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Reflecting back, could you share one or two concerns or worries that you had that you can remember? And how did you appease that thought despite these worries and concerns?
Well, a couple concerns I had were professional. Again, I really enjoyed the position that I had in Ottawa, and I was going into a position where I had no idea what the work culture was like. I had no idea what the work processes were like, the structures. I didn't know anybody within that world where I was going. Another concern of mine was on the personal side, and that was at that time I was in my late 20s and
Yeah.
I was thinking of my own personal goals, which were, sorry, to maybe settle down and start a family. And to have to start your whole life over abroad, it changes your timeline a little bit.
Absolutely.
And at the time, my partner was not willing to continue the relationship if I was going abroad. So there was a personal sacrifice to be made as well.
Yeah.
Another one of my concerns were my family. I'm an only child,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very close with my parents. And so and I say this in the most positive sense, but there's a dependency there.
Of course.
And my
Absolutely.
parents, they're in good health, thank God, but they're no spring chickens either. So diplomatic posts vary based on the country that you're residing in,
Yeah.
but this first one was a good 4 to 5 years. So a lot can happen
Right.
in 4 to 5 years, as we will all discover as we continue our
Mm.
conversation, but as we reflect on our own lives as well. Think about where you were 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially with COVID, that was a whole
Mm.
experience in and of itself. But one changes a lot and experiences a lot
I
in four to
know.
5 years. So that was another one of my concerns. Now, what did I do to appease those worries? I did what I usually do in tough situations. I say out loud to myself, Jenna, it's time to put on your big girl pants and to face it and keep going. Literally, like, those are the words I say to myself, because we tend to want to take the path of least resistance naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And looking back on my life, my parents always encouraged me to take their path, which was settle in London, Ontario, find a good government job. There's security in that. Meet someone, get a house, form a family, and then just stay in London.
Yeah.
It's safe in London.
Right.
I know London, you know London, it's safe in London. I appreciate that. I mean, it's your parents' jobs to protect your children. I get it.
Yeah.
But early on in my
Right.
life, I realized that it's not for me. I needed to take those risks, calculated risks, but I need to take risks and see what happens in life.
Mm-hmm.
An example, to take a couple steps back, if I may, is when we had discussed you opening a door for me on Parliament Hill. I had mentioned that I was working for a department,
Yeah.
a federal department, when I was a student, and there would have been opportunities to continue in the federal department. Now, when I ended up getting an opportunity to be employed on the Hill, there was a significant pay cut
Yeah.
to that, because members of parliament have certain budgets, and it needs to be managed in a transparent and accountable way, and that's what it is. And I remember my parents were like, you cannot accept that, like, don't take it, you stick with the
Yes.
job that pays you more, that gives you security.
Mm-hmm.
And I, said, if it's something you want to do, then you make the
Right.
sacrifices and you do it and you go for it. And that's the same mentality I had when I decided to go
Mm-hmm.
abroad.
Wow. So courageous. I think I'm more of a risk taker. My default is actually to be more of a risk taker. So the idea of having stability, I'm sure I do appreciate it. And probably subconsciously there is this element of, I do like stability, but I also really do enjoy taking those risks and pushing the boundaries of what we're expected or we think we should do. I really enjoy that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's very interesting about this idea of really just embracing whatever comes your way, because you'll be able to deal with it.
But I think it's very important to qualify the risk by saying a calculated risk.
Yeah.
I believe in really thinking something through, hence my pro and cons chart.
Yes, love that.
But, life is mysterious. Life is the unknown, but life is exciting. And it's there for you, and you get one shot. So think it through and go for it. And the worst case, it doesn't work out. Then you take a step back and you try again, or you go back. But at least you can tell yourself, I tried.
Love that. That is perfect. Great advice. Great advice. Well, I think we can certainly move into the second segment of the podcast, which is actually understanding some of the challenges and the opportunities that you have faced as an expat in Europe over the last 5 years. And again, I appreciate your journey to living as an expat was work, and in some ways a slightly easier transition than someone just be backpacking and then deciding to stay and live as an expat. But I imagine there were some challenges that you faced when you moved to Europe. Can you share some of these with our listeners?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I came here most recently to work. However, I did my third year of undergrad in southern France, in Nice. And so I've been an expat twice in my life. Once as a student, I don't want to do the calculation, a good 13 to 14 years ago. And then again, back for work years later.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right to say an expat has many different sectors and different experiences that come with it.
Yeah.
When you're here for work, there is just a very strong support system to help you through the administration, to help you get settled, so on and so forth. Absolutely. When you're a student too, there's support that comes from the university or the program organizers as well. But there is a little bit more self-dependency to get yourself settled.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, I mean, the challenges, of course, professional and personal challenges. Professional challenges being a new work culture, a new workspace, the language as well.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's language training beforehand, but my arrival here was quite quick.
Yeah.
It was quite expeditious. And so my language training was done on site. So there was quite a big language barrier at the beginning. And there's also the personal elements of it, meaning you come here when you don't know anyone. How do you even make that first friend? Do you join a meetup group? Do you join a gym? Like, how do you really plant that seed to kind of grow your network? So those first couple months can be quite the transition. But again, it is part of the experience, because at the end of the day, when you look back, when your post is done, you look at all the people you've met, the networks you build, the experiences you've had, the challenges you faced but have overcome, to look at it and say,
yeah,
I came, I saw, I conquered, feels pretty good.
Yes, definitely. Well, and so how did you mentioned this idea of making friends, and I know you're a very sociable person, as am I. And so I get a lot from, the people that I surround myself with and my network of friends and so on. And I know work was, I'm sure, super demanding at the time, but did you just kind of immerse yourself in work, for the first few months? And then once you settled into the routine, you were able to kind of look around you and start trying to purposefully meet new people? Or were you already trying to do that from like the get-go?
I was trying to do that from the get-go because I just got lonely really quickly. And I remember my first couple of weeks, I was working quite a bit. Yes, there was a lot of work, but also because, and this is another obstacle, a professional obstacle, is like you don't have a system yet when you first start in a new position, in a new role. And so when you're putting together a certain project, little things as having a stapler beside you don't have a stapler. So you have to walk around 10 minutes trying to find a stapler, like those little processes or those little things that need to get established in order for you to be quite efficient at what you do. So I was working quite a bit, and then I was going home, and the first couple of nights I remember just talking to friends and family back in Canada or watching Netflix. And I told myself, I'm in an amazing city. Like, I want to go out there and meet people, and I want to make some friends, and I want to see what it's like to live through the eyes of the locals. And so then at that point, I joined some meetup groups. I would go to receptions and try to speak to people that were roughly my age. And say, let's go grab a coffee, let's go grab a beer, let's go grab a glass of wine. It's a lot of work because you're the one that has to follow up. You're the one that has to initiate. Yeah. You're the one that has to, there was so much small talk, Nicole. So many icebreaker conversations. And, I'm not a huge fan of that, but you have to start from somewhere. So,
yes. No, that's amazing. So you actually were very intentional with trying to bridge the gaps and meet the people. And even if nothing came from it, you still were really trying to build that shortly after you arrived in Europe.
Exactly. And I wasn't always successful. Some people found the language barrier too much, or some cultures, they have very close circles, circles of friends that they've grown up with and then that they live their life with. And that's just how it is. And I, of course, respect that.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit like you in that, when there's a challenge, it gives me more motivation to kind of break through it. And so I wanted to get in that circle, and I got in some circles and some I didn't. And, that's life. Sometimes you succeed and sometimes you fail. And I failed sometimes, but it was fun trying.
I love the pursuit to like break through friend
Yeah,
groups.
yeah, that was my main
It's amazing.
determination. No, but also though, like once you kind of get over that first hill and you make like I have this fantastic friend and we're gonna be lifelong friends. I met her at a reception and then we grabbed a coffee and then we
Mm,
grabbed a beer and then she invited me to her birthday party and then I met someone there and then I started hanging out with her friend and then I met another friend through her friend. So it was like the
amazing.
mushroom image and that's kind of how you do it.
Yeah, it's interesting because in London,
So sorry, Nicole, you're London or my London?
good one. London, England, good one. I like that, Jenna. So in London, England, despite the fact that English is the language that everyone generally speaks, there is still an element of friendship groups stemming back to school. And when I say school, it means like primary school. And a lot of people tend to keep those friendship groups very, very strong and very, I would say, very tight knit. And so I found even though London is amazing, there are so many opportunities to meet new people and to have new experiences. I would say that there are probably similar barriers in the sense that people have very tight-knit friendship groups and are, I think, very protective of those. And I think as an expat, even in a country where you do speak the same language, it can still be challenging. In any event, I had a somewhat similar experience, but I think being that sort of North American person, you just kind of are like, hi, do you want to hang out? Do you want to meet up? Do you want to come over for dinner? And there's just this element naturally of almost breaking down those barriers, not intentionally, but just by being who you are in a way, which is a little bit more overtly chatty. But at least I am. So
No, no, for sure. It's definitely a culture clash.
Mm.
Like, it's definitely a culture clash between North American and some European countries. Absolutely. But that's also the interesting part of being abroad. That's the reason why you want to go abroad is to experience what
So
it's like to live in the
interesting.
shoes of someone else. And there's going to be some great experiences that come with it and some more challenging experiences that come with it. But at the end of the day, like, that's what draws you to such a role.
I love it. I know.
But yeah, I think it's a fair analysis to say that North Americans, we tend to be a little, or maybe Canadians, I don't know, we tend to be a little more like, oh, what's the problem? Let's go, come over for dinner. Like, oh, I'll introduce you to some of my friends. You introduce me to some of yours. But
Yeah, we love that.
yeah.
The next thing that I want to talk to you about was your family, because you did mention that you are an only child, and I know you're very close with your parents. So how have you dealt with having them abroad and trying to, stay connected and close with your family, especially now that you've also had, you've started your own family?
I think the family element was the most difficult sacrifice that I've made as an expat. Not only is it
Mm-hmm.
being away or missing or being unable to partake in the habitual celebrations, birthdays, bridal showers, baptisms, bar mitzvahs. It's very difficult when, again, over 4 to 5 years, a lot of things can happen. And that includes deaths in the family, major health issues. And when you can't easily
Yeah.
jump in a taxi or in your car and drive there and support, and you're instead talking about an 8, 9, 10 hour flight or an entire trip that can take up to 22 hours
Yeah.
sometimes, like that can be very, very difficult. So I unfortunately, in the last 4 years, lost two of my grandparents.
Yeah.
And so that was very, very difficult. And it made me realize to what extent personal sacrifices are made
Yeah.
when you become an expat, whether you go as a student or for work or for your government or what it may be. The other side of it is, it's also an opportunity to build wonderful memories with your family members because, of course, they will likely come to try and visit you. And then together you get to explore a new culture, some interesting places, cities, monuments, museum. You get to build quite unique memories together, and that's always wonderful. But with technology, video chats, calls are much easier, long distance calls are no issue now. So technology, of course, has helped to build a bridge between the geographical distance that exists between your family, your roots, and then wherever your host country is.
I love that. I like how you explain that. I don't really think there is necessarily overcoming that specific challenge of not having your family close by, but how you have explained it is that you tend to look forward to the opportunities when your family can come and visit and you guys can share that sort of exploration novelty that comes with being an expat living abroad. So you can share those experiences together with your family when that happens.
Absolutely. I mean, I
So,
go back to my pros and
yeah.
cons list. There's cons and then there's pros to the sacrifice
Yeah.
that comes with the geographical distance.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the last challenges I wanted to speak to you about, which I'm not sure whether or not you did find this to be a challenge, but administrative and institutional issues. Did you have any when you
Yes,
moved?
yes, 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 yes. It's a universal challenge. You experience that everywhere. You can't run from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some administrational burdens are incredibly heavy for reasons I still don't understand. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of maybe the label of expat, if I can put it that way. As a
Mm,
student, there was support from the university and the program managers. And there was even more support when I came here for work. So, but no, absolutely. I mean, there's visas, there's passport renewals, there is a considerable amount of administrative burden. However, that's to be expected. And so if you are thinking about becoming an expat
yeah.
or if you want to take an opportunity abroad and
Yeah.
therefore becoming an expat, yes, there'll be paperwork, but millions of people got through it before you, so you'll get through it too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I also found that speaking to local friends who had already dealt with that. So, for example, finding a doctor, finding a dentist, these sorts of basic aspects that you just don't know where to even start. You don't know where to go, what forms to fill out, just asking your friends who are local. That for me has been super helpful. So,
No, you're absolutely right. I remember in order to open a bank
mm,
account at the time, I'm sure this has changed, I needed a phone number, but in order to get a cell phone, I needed a bank account. So I was like, help me square this circle. I don't understand. So I'm sure, I mean, we figured it out, but like there was ways to get through it. Actually, just as you had mentioned, just give the cell number of a friend until I had my cell number, something like that. But it was just kind of these little things where it's just like quite the path to try and navigate.
yes.
But again, in terms of finding a doctor and dentist, yes, it can be. I remember, well, luckily I didn't really need one too much when I was a student, but there was some challenging times to try and locate one. Now, in Europe in particular, there's apps that are very, very common and very easy to use and that are translated in I don't even know how many languages. So it's those types of challenges are surmountable quite quickly now.
I agree. And sometimes it's almost just about being creative with how you deal with it rather than seeing it just purely as an obstacle. It's also about trying to find a creative solution. Exactly like you said, oh, I need a cell phone in order to get a bank account. Can I give a number of a friend who I trust and I've come to know? Yes. Okay, great. Creative solution sorted, So,
Exactly. And I will say what really was super useful in terms of like these general everyday questions. For example, where I am now, you can't, if you want to use public transportation, you can't just go on the bus, for example, and give money. You have to get tickets, but you can't get tickets on the bus. So you have to figure out where you can get tickets from, like those types of questions. And even more complicated administrative questions. There's all these expat Facebook pages, and they're not just like, oh, expat living in X country, Y country, Z country. It's very like, I live in this neighborhood in this country. Like they're quite localized.
wow.
And people are very
Wow.
honest. I mean, you have to filter through not the best information that's being published. There's some very honest comments and great direction on various Facebook pages. So I would strongly recommend that as a good source of everyday information.
That's a very good tip. That's amazing. Well, the last question I had for you was, do you have any advice for people considering making the move and living abroad as an expat?
Yes, the advice I would offer would be to do your pros and your cons list and really think it through what it would give you professionally, personally,
Mm-hmm.
how it would challenge you, and what do you think you would get from overcoming those challenges?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you decide to take that calculated risk, to do it, to be aware that there will be
Mm-hmm.
challenges, that there will be difficult times, that you may think I shouldn't have done this, but to always keep in mind and to stay conscious that you'll get through it because so many people before you have, and you will
Mm-hmm.
thrive. It's the world is your oyster, and it's an amazing place. I've had the great honor to travel to over, I think I'm at 40 countries now from
Wow.
all continents. And each one is unique and fascinating and interesting in its own way. And it makes you realize how vast this world is.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, how on a very personal level, how minimal some of your problems really are. And it helps you reevaluate a lot of your personal dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's something that you're interested in and it's something that you think your life can accommodate, take the time and really think it through and try it. Because worst case, you go home after.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's actually not even a worst case. That's like just okay, go home now.
Yeah,
Time
that's
to
true. There we go. Time to go home.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jenna. That's great. Great advice. Great advice. Right. We are at the Envisionaire questionnaire segment, which is a fun feature of the Envisionaire podcast. And this is where we ask guests 3 questions reflecting on their past, present, and future. So, looking towards your past, if there was any advice that you could give to your 15-year-old self, what would that be?
It's a very good question. The advice I would have given myself would be to keep going.
Keep going.
2 words, keep going.
Is that because when you were 15, you were trepidatious about what the future held?
No, I think it was more that everything was so uncertain. At 15, I think very few people know who they are and know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And so I would tell myself just to keep going because things will fall into place. Keep going, take those calculated risks, and see what doors open up because they did open up. And especially as an expat, my life has changed dramatically. Like I mentioned before, I came to my first posting single and ready to mingle, and I left with a husband and a baby. So take those calculated risks, keep going because things will fall into place.
Yeah. And you never know where you'll end up, right?
Never.
But it all works out. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Second question, reflecting on the present. If you could seek advice from anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Another very good question. I think I would seek advice from a woman, as a woman myself, who has breached many barriers, overcome many barriers, notably in the political world, who has overcome many barriers in order to really deliver on their goals and objectives. And I say that because as a woman, I've experienced a lot of stereotypical challenges. And it's particularly frustrating me because we're in 2022. And I don't know, first of all, it was never justifiable years ago and is certainly not justifiable now.
Yeah.
And so I would like to seek their advice on specific experiences that they've had and how they've overcome that in order to be the success that they are today.
Yeah. Is there a particular role model that you in within this sphere? I can think of a few off the top of my head, but I don't know if there's anyone in particular that you really admire.
I give credit to any politician that has the courage to put their name on a ballot
Mm.
and those that have successfully navigated the political world because of their genuine transparency and good intentions. Those are the ones that I would seek advice from.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, final question, future looking. What's one goal that you think that you would like to achieve in the next 5 years?
Well, I have many professional goals, but my most recent personal goal is to learn how to drive a standard car. Because in Europe, everybody drives standards, and I can't drive a standard, and we own a standard, and I
Yes,
can't
yes.
drive it. And in North America, it's not common to drive a standard car. I'm sorry, it's not like
Yeah.
a major goal, but it's one that impacts my life every day. So I really want to learn how to drive a standard car
Amazing. Amazing. Are you taking lessons?
from my partner. Yes.
Okay.
But his,
How's that go? Because
it's not going well because he doesn't take me to a parking lot. Like, I don't know what it was like when you first learned how to drive when you were 16, but my mom took me to a parking lot, a very safe, open space. He just brings me on the road and
yeah.
says, go. He's from the school of
Well,
hard
that's
knocks.
good. Well, but you know what? I mean, look, it's like that's what is it like sink or swim?
Yeah, sink or swim. He's just cannonballing it right in the pool.
No, that's good. Well, you know what? I am excited to come visit you, and hopefully you will be driving your stick car by then, and I'll be very excited to join you in your car.
Absolutely. Now I have a timeline on my goal. Thank you, Nicole.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Jenna, for everything, taking the time to speak to us today. I think that you will definitely inspire someone to take that plunge if they've been thinking about it. And I think your advice is really, really sound, and you are living the expat life.
Well, thank you again for the invitation, Nicole, and congratulations on this amazing podcast. And
thanks, Jenna.
I listened to your other episodes, and they were inspiring. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jenna. Lots of love, and I will speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Envisionaire podcast. You are now officially an Envisionaire, so welcome to the club. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast so that you stay up to date on all of our new episodes. And remember, every day offers us a new opportunity to start envisioning and living our best lives.